The story of Pinocchio, as most people know, is a charming tale of a wooden puppet who dreams of becoming a real boy. Created by the kind-hearted woodcarver Geppetto, Pinocchio is brought to life by a fairy who grants him his wish, but warns him that he must prove himself brave, truthful, and unselfish to become fully human. Pinocchio then sets out on a series of adventures, accompanied by the narrator of the piece, Jiminy Cricket. Throughout the film, Pinocchio faces various challenges and temptations, including encounters with the sly fox and cat, as well as a trip to Pleasure Island. In the process, he joins Stromboli's puppet show and is led astray by many different characters. He becomes dishonest, a development that causes his nose to grow longer and longer every time he lies. Later though, Pinocchio redeems himself by rescuing his creator Geppetto from Monstro, a vicious whale, seemingly sacrificing himself in the process. The film ends on a fairy tale note. He is then transformed into a real boy as the fairy had promised he would at the beginning if he proved virtuous, and ultimately he achieved his dream. This ending is what one might expect from a Disney movie, a heartwarming tale about a character that goes astray and then is led back to the good path. In the end, this is the kind of story one tells children as an example of moral behavior. However, the original story, The Adventures of Pinocchio, is far darker and more brutal, reflecting the harsh realities of 19th century Italy. Disney's movie is based on a story that was first published in parts in the early 1880s as The Adventures of Pinocchio. The story was written by an Italian author named Carlo Lorenzini, who used the pen name Carlo Collodi. Carlo Lorenzini was born in Florence in 1826. As a young man, he became involved in politics and fought in the Italian Wars of Independence and Unification from 1848 to the early 1860s. These wars aimed to remove Austrian control and unite the Italian state. Carlo was deeply critical of Europe's political and social state at that time and often wrote allegorical stories to criticize Italian and European society. In the 1870s, he began working on one such story about an amiable but rascal character who would express his views on society. He eventually wrote this as The Story of a Puppet. This work was then brought together and published in one edition as The Adventures of Pinocchio. Carlo Collodi's The Adventures of Pinocchio was first serialized in an Italian children's magazine in 1881 and later published as a book in 1883. The original story of Pinocchio opens up with a man named Mastro Cherry attempting to saw a log, but when he carves into the block of wood, it cries, "Please be careful, do not hit me so hard." The log begs in a small, childlike voice, much to Mastro Cherry's surprise. He keeps carving away, but this time the block of wood begins to laugh like a child, saying the hatchet tickles his belly. At this point, Mastro Cherry decides this talking piece of wood is too much trouble and gives it to his friend Geppetto, who's been wanting to make a marionette. Carlo's Pinocchio is not the innocent, well-meaning character seen in Disney's adaptation. Instead, he's mischievous, disobedient, and often cruel. Right out of the gate, Pinocchio is kind of a jerk, constantly tormenting his creator. While he's still a block of wood, he calls Geppetto Pelendino, which translates from Italian to cornmeal mush, an insult because it refers to Geppetto's yellow hair. Geppetto thinks Mastro Cherry says it and the two get into a fight, all because of a log of wood. As Geppetto carves Pinocchio's mouth, the puppet laughs and sticks out its wooden tongue. When Geppetto finished carving Pinocchio's feet, Pinocchio kicks him in the face. Geppetto's dream is to make a marionette he can travel around the world with, but he immediately regrets making Pinocchio, who is both verbally and physically violent to the poor woodworker. As soon as Geppetto gets over being kicked in the face and puts the final touches on Pinocchio, the marionette runs away. Geppetto chases Pinocchio, but a police officer catches him, picking him up by his wooden nose. Once reunited with Geppetto, Pinocchio has a total meltdown in front of the townspeople, who seem totally fine with a marionette that can walk and talk on its own. In fact, people are more concerned about Geppetto punishing Pinocchio once they get home, so the police takes Geppetto to prison. As he's ushered away by the police, Geppetto shows further regret over making Pinocchio, saying, "I should have given the matter more thought." One of the most shocking moments in the original story is when Pinocchio, in a fit of rage, kills the talking cricket with a hammer. The character that Disney transformed into the lovable Jiminy Cricket. After Geppetto is taken off to prison, Pinocchio goes back to the old man's house and is greeted by a talking cricket. In the book, this chatty insect is simply known as the cricket. He tells Pinocchio he's lived in the room 100 years and scolds the marionette for his behavior. Rather than taking this advice, Pinocchio gets annoyed and throws a hammer at the cricket. Pinocchio gets hungry and tries to fry an egg, but a chick hatches from the egg, and he leaves to find food. He knocks on a neighbor's door, but they fear he's pulling a prank and dump water on him. Cold and wet, Pinocchio goes home and lies down on a stove, and upon waking, he finds his feet have burned off. Luckily, Geppetto is released from prison, gives Pinocchio 3 pears to eat for breakfast, and makes him a new pair of feet. In gratitude, he promises to attend school, and Geppetto makes him a suit of clothing consisting of a dress made of flowered paper, 3 bark shoes, and a cap made of dough, and sells his only coat to buy him a spelling book. On his way to school the next morning, Pinocchio encounters the great marionette theater and sells his school book to buy a ticket for the show. During the show, the puppet Harlequin, Pulcinella, and Signora Rosaura calls out to Pinocchio. This angers the puppet master, and he decides to use Pinocchio as firewood to cook his dinner. However, after Pinocchio pleads for his and Harlequin's salvation, and he learns of Geppetto's poverty, the puppet master releases him and gives him 5 gold pieces. On his way home, Pinocchio encounters a fox and a cat. The cat pretends to be blind and the fox pretends to be lame. A white-black bird tries to warn Pinocchio of their lies, but the cat eats the bird. 2 con artists who trick him into burying his gold coins in the Field of Miracles, promising they will grow into a tree of gold. They stop for dinner at the Red Lobster Inn, where they trick Pinocchio into paying for their meals, and flee after telling the innkeeper to tell Pinocchio they will meet him at the Field of Miracles in the morning. As Pinocchio sets off for the city of Catchfools, the ghost of the talking cricket appears and tells him to go home and give the coins to his father. Pinocchio ignores his warnings, and again, as he passes through the forest, the fox and the cat, disguised as bandits, ambush and rob him. He escapes to a white house where he is greeted by a young fairy who says she is dead. Unfortunately, the fox and the cat catch Pinocchio and hang him in a tree, and leave him after getting tired of waiting for him to suffocate, leaving Pinocchio to die alone. The fairy saves Pinocchio and calls 3 doctors to check on him. The owl says he's alive, the crow says he's dead, and the ghost of the talking cricket says he's fine, but has been naughty and hurt his father. The fairy gives Pinocchio a medicine which he takes when some rabbits come to take his body away. After getting better, when asked about what happened to his gold coins, Pinocchio lies and his nose grows. The fairy explains that lying makes his nose grow and has woodpeckers trim it down. They reach the city of Catchfools as Pinocchio heads out to find Geppetto. Pinocchio meets the fox and the cat again, who reminds him of the Field of Miracles, and he agrees to go with them and plant his gold. Once there, Pinocchio buries his coins and leaves to wait 20 minutes for it to grow, only for the fox and the cat to dig up the coins and run away. A parrot laughs at him for being tricked. Pinocchio goes to a judge to report the theft, but the judge sentences him to 4 months in jail for being foolish. Luckily, he is released early when the emperor declares a celebration for their victory after defeating the enemies. On his way back to the forest, Pinocchio finds a huge snake with a smoking tail blocking its path. He asks it to move, but it stays still, so he thinks it's dead. When he tries to step over it, the snake suddenly moves and scares him, making him fall. The snake laughs so hard at Pinocchio's fright that it bursts an artery and dies. Pinocchio then goes to the fairy's house but stops to steal grapes from a farmer's yard. He gets caught in a trap and meets a glowworm. The farmer finds him and ties him up in a doghouse. Pinocchio later stops some weasels from stealing chickens, so the farmer frees him as gratitude. When Pinocchio finally returns to the cottage, he finds a gravestone and thinks the fairy has died. A kind pigeon sees Pinocchio sad about the fairy's death and offers to take him to the seashore where Geppetto is building a boat to find Pinocchio. Pinocchio tries to swim to his father but gets washed ashore. Geppetto is swallowed by a huge dogfish. A dolphin gives Pinocchio a ride to the island of busy bees where everyone works hard. Pinocchio helps a lady carry her jug home for food and water and realizes she is the fairy, now older. She says she will be his mother and sends him to school, promising he can become a real boy if he does well for a year. Pinocchio studies hard and becomes the best student in his class, making other boys jealous. They trick him into skipping school by saying there's a sea monster at the beach. But they lied. A fight happens and Pinocchio is blamed for hurting another boy. He runs away and saves a drowning dog named Alidoro. Pinocchio gets caught in a fisherman's net and is almost eaten. The fisherman looks like a sea monster and thinks Pinocchio is a marionette fish. Even after finding out Pinocchio can talk, the fisherman asks him how he wants to be cooked. Do you want to be fried in a pan or do you prefer to be cooked with tomato sauce? The fisherman asks. Just before Pinocchio is put into boiling oil, his dog friend Alidoro saves him, snatching him from the fisherman's hand, and they escape. Pinocchio meets the fairy's snail and the fairy gives him another chance. Pinocchio does excellently in school and the fairy promises that he will be a real boy the next day, saying he should invite all his friends to a party. He goes to invite everyone but is sidetracked after meeting Lamp Wick, one of his closest friends, who tells him he is heading to a place called Land of Toys, where children play all day and never work or study. Pinocchio goes along with him and they have a wonderful time for the next 5 months. One morning, Pinocchio and Lamp Wick awake with donkey's ears. A marmot tells Pinocchio that he has gotten donkey fever as boys who plays and never study or work turns into donkeys. Soon, both Pinocchio and Lamp Wick are fully transformed, and Pinocchio is sold to a circus where he's trained to do tricks until he falls and sprains his leg. The ringmaster then sells Pinocchio to a man who wants to skin him and use his hide to make a drum, and throws him into the sea to drown him. But when he goes to retrieve the corpse, he finds Pinocchio, who explains that the fish ate all the donkey skin off him, and he is now a puppet again. Pinocchio dives back into the water and swims out to sea, where the terrible dogfish appears and swallows him. Inside the dogfish, Pinocchio unexpectedly finds Geppetto sitting at a table eating fish, which the shark has swallowed as well. The two escape the sleeping shark only because it sleeps with his mouth open due to asthma and heart trouble. After escaping the great shark, Pinocchio and Geppetto nearly drown. The two make it to shore, but Geppetto is weak. Pinocchio and Geppetto encounter the fox and the cat, who are now poor, disabled and blind respectively. They ask for food and money, but Pinocchio refuses, saying they deserve their bad luck. They then reach a small house where the ghost of the talking cricket lives. The cricket says they can stay and tells them he got the house from a little goat with hair. Pinocchio asks the cricket where he would find some milk, and the cricket leads him to a farmer named John who had some cows. Pinocchio asks Farmer John for a glass of warm milk to give Geppetto, and the farmer agrees to do so if Pinocchio draws 100 buckets of water from the farm's well. The farmer reveals that his dying donkey had been the one drawing water for him. Pinocchio asks to see the donkey and recognizes the donkey. He asks the donkey who he is, and the donkey says he is Lamp Wick before dying. For the next 5 months, Pinocchio pulled 100 buckets of water for the farmer so he can give Geppetto a glass of warm milk. After many months of working and taking care of Geppetto, Pinocchio goes to town with his saved money to buy a new suit. He learns that the fairy who took care of him was sick and needs money. So he gives all his money to the snail from the island of busy bees. That night, he dreams of the fairy kissing him. When he wakes up, he is a real boy, and his marionette puppet body is lifeless on a chair. The fairy has also left him with a new suit, boots, and a bag with 40 gold coins. Geppetto is also healthy again. Boy Pinocchio laughs and says how ridiculous he was as a marionette, and that's the end of the story. The moral lesson in Carlo's Pinocchio are delivered with a severity that will be unsettling for a modern audience. Pinocchio's frequent misadventures led to severe consequences, including near-death experiences. The story doesn't shy away from depicting the harsh realities of punishment. For instance, in the original tale, Pinocchio is subjected to torture by the puppeteer and even hanged. Such scenes were considered too intense for Disney's animation, which aimed to provide a more whimsical and uplifting experience for children. Disney's film transformed the darker elements of the original story into more light-hearted and fantastical scenarios. The original tale's dark themes and violent chapters were deemed too intense for a young audience. Disney's adaptation softened the character of Pinocchio, making him more innocent and endearing. Disney's version of Pinocchio focuses more on positive outcomes. The character of Pinocchio is depicted as a charming and innocent puppet whose journey toward becoming a real boy is framed as an uplifting adventure rather than a series of harrowing trials. Disney's adaptation emphasizes redemption and moral growth through less severe, more family-friendly conflicts. The violence and gruesome elements were removed or toned down, and the story was given a more optimistic and moralistic tone. By contrasting the dark punishments of the original story with positive reinforcements, Disney aimed to deliver a message of hope and the value of good behavior in a more palatable way.